The date is February the 23rd, 1999, and we are resuming the interview with Tom and Freda Trapp. Previously, Tom and Freda were interviewed on November the 23rd and December the 17th, 1998, on the life and times of Tom's grandfather, Mr. T.J. Trapp, a pioneer New Westminster hardware merchant and an active community member. Today we are going to discuss Tom's father, Thomas Dockrell Trapp, and of course the interesting life of Tom himself, who resides in New Westminster and is enjoying retirement with his wife, Freda. Well, Tom, thank you very much for having me in your home, Freda, to continue this interview with you. And today I'd just like to find out a little more about the family and, as I said in the introduction, delve into your father's past and your past. So, Tom, I understand now that you were born in New Westminster in 1913 in the Royal Columbian Hospital. It didn't happen to be on the 29th of October, was it?
So I'm afraid I was a Halloween baby.
Oh.
A spooky baby, they say. So that was my chief claim to fame.
Well, the reason I asked the 29th is because that's my birthday. And I was born in the Royal Columbian Hospital. So at least we have two things, or one thing in common. Well, maybe one and a half, who knows. Tom, what was it like for a young boy growing up in New Westminster in those days?
Well, it was pretty interesting. We had a lot of friends who went to school at, I started at Spencer School, and then they changed the regions or the districts, so I ended up in Central School. I went to school there, and it was interesting because while I was in school there, I remember my grandfather coming one day because you could hear his cane as he's tapping on the floor, walking up, and then the teacher was waiting for him, so he visited our class. My brother and I pretty near got into a fight. I don't know what it was about. But anyways, grandfather came in and said a few words. But I think it was a wonderful thing for him to do that, because I haven't seen a chairman of the school board do that since. So it's quite remarkable.
Yeah, well, he was a remarkable man, let's face it. What did you went to elementary school, eventually called Central. I don't imagine you went to Connaught. I would assume you went to T.J. Trapp Tech, did you?
No, I didn't. I decided on more of the academic.
Oh, I see.
So I don't know why, but anyways, I went to Connaught. But it was odd because the association with the T.J. Trapp Technical School was pretty strong.
Yeah.
And my grandfather had started that.
Yes.
So, anyways, I remember that quite well. We used to go and play football on the square there that's right behind the present City Hall. That was right by Connaught High School.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, we had our fun at school.
Mm-hmm.
I remember once going to a class, and the teacher used to mark on the board whether we got perfect or not. So this one and only day that I spelled something correctly, she asked me, like she's marking on the board, so I said that I was perfect.
Perfect. Perfect.
A non show off thing. So she sent me out in the hall immediately. So one memory memorable occasion at Central School. Another was, I always remember this, you had a bully in the school. So he liked to get hold of guys and sort of hold them as if he was going to hit them, you know. And so this guy came and grabbed me, and I didn't do anything. I just waited for him to cool down, and which he did finally. So, so anyway, those are just little.
That's interesting.
You happen to remember some of your great teachers too.
Oh yes, and this chap was a sort of a bully in disguise. Well, you know, in a way, I'm so disappointed you didn't go to T.J. Trapp Tech, because I thought you might come up with a story saying, I saw a boy throwing rocks at the school one day. I said, don't throw rocks at my school. See, my name's on it. Well, that's all right. And
no, but it's a funny thing that the name was attached to me too. So they've had one or two reunions which they have asked me to speak. So I enjoyed that and the company.
Oh yeah.
So I do have sort of a what would you say, a memorable occasion once or twice because of the T.J. Trapp Technical School.
Would you want
the first time we went, it was a dance.
Oh.
I mean, a dinner and dance.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody was all dressed up.
You were just making reference to some memories about teachers. Would you some of your favorite teachers, or some of your ones, some of the ones who were not too favorite either? Would you want to share some of those stories with us?
Well, there were two teachers. I remember two men teachers. One was Joe Chell. I think he finally became school superintendent, and Ernie Lee, who did.
Oh, he did some education.
Went back to Ottawa, I think, on physical education during the war. So those were two. They were such energetic fellows, a real breath of fresh air in the school at that time. Another one I remember quite well is Miss Lehman, and she was kind of a, very sort of popular teacher at that time.
Oh. Lehman.
Yeah. She comes from the Lehman family that out at Mount Lehman.
Sure. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So
quite a pioneer family.
Yeah, she's gone now.
Yes. Yes. What did you do for fun in the neighborhood? What besides steal apples and so on?
Well, we did that too. We had a fellow next door. He had a beautiful orchard in his backyard.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Mr. Fowler. But we used to like to reach over the fence, and anything that hung over the fence, of course, was fair game. And that was right near where we lived on Third Avenue.
Well, that's very interesting. I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about your mother. Did she come from New Westminster?
Well, my mother actually came from Prince Edward Island, and her maiden name was Offer. And I always remember my dad's story about when they got married. He, of course, went back to Prince Edward Island. He met her out here, of course, and she got married. And after he got married, he wired. We used to have telegraph in those days. So he wired back, because he didn't have anyways, he wired back home to the family, his mother and father, that he had accepted Offer. That was my mother's maiden name, as I say.
Oh.
And returning home post haste. So he had to get back to business at the hardware store.
When was your mother born? Did you have awareness of that?
I don't remember that.
No, I think 93, somewhere,
1893.
About
Is that right?
somewhere in there.
And when did she die?
Well, She died in 78.
Oh.
So, and my father died in 1947. So she lived longer as a widow than as a married person.
Your father died in 1947, did you say? And when was he born?
He was born about that same time.
1890 something.
Something like that. 1890. Yes.
Well, let's see. Go back. He got married in 1913.
Yeah.
So go back 20 years.
Yeah. Something like that.
83.
Oh,
1883 somewhere.
yeah, 1883. That would be more like
your
it.
grandfather wasn't even married in 83, Tom. He got married in 86, so how can you?
Yeah, so it could be that, right?
It could be anywhere after.
I think you're doing very well, though, stretching back like that. Please. I ask some people these questions, say, ask me something interesting. But he got,
probably about 89, maybe somewhere.
And was he born in New Westminster?
He was born.
That's interesting because I've interviewed a few people. This is the first time I've come across a situation where a chap was born in Westminster and his father was born in Westminster as well. And he was born and raised in Westminster. So,
yeah, both.
Yeah. And did you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I had one brother, Dr. William George Trapp.
Dr. William George Trapp.
Who died in 1981, 82. And he was quite a well-known surgeon. And he worked at the Vancouver General Hospital, and he actually made the hyperbaric chamber there with another fellow. That was the start of that at the Vancouver General. Also, he was a heart surgeon.
I found a whole lot of stuff on him just recently that I can show you later. Out of the paper that I found, I had in the front of one of my scrapbooks.
Yes. Was he older or younger?
Younger.
He was younger.
Yeah,
Did you have other brothers as well?
He was born, just Bill. And my sister was Mel, and she married a fellow named Matt Lawson. He was a civil engineer.
What is his name?
Lawson.
Lawson?
Lawson.
Yes.
Lawson. Matt Lawson, civil engineer.
Excuse me, was it Matt Lawson? Matt, I'm sorry.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, John.
Yeah. Excuse me?
Matthew, Mark, Luke.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's quite a family you have.
Matthew, so. Anyways, he got to be the planner for planning engineer for the city of Toronto. Later on.
So they lived in Toronto all their lives, and they never come out here. But next year we hope they're coming. Because their daughter came out with her baby and husband last year for about 2 or 3 days, and she's bringing them all out this time.
She was quite a gal. No? She was a big basketball player at UBC, so she was quite an outgoing, energetic person.
Well, your sister is living in Eastern Canada now?
Toronto.
In Toronto, and your brother died.
Yeah.
When did he?
82.
82. Sorry,
Prior to his death, he was married twice, and both wives died.
Oh, I see.
Before he did.
Well, that's interesting. And then along came Freda, right? Later on in your life. And Freda, would you mind if I asked you what your maiden name was?
Freda Field.
Freda Field. And were you born in Westminster or
I was born in Victoria.
In Victoria. Oh, I see. And so you grew up in Victoria.
No, I grew up. I spent 1 year in Montreal, and then Dad came back and started a business in Vancouver. Started accountancy.
Oh, I see.
And we lived in Vancouver from about 1918. I guess we were in Kitsilano for quite a while, and then we moved out to University Hill. And we lived out there well, Dad and Mother lived there for about 40 years, I guess.
Oh, I see. About 40 years.
But during the war, Tommy was overseas, and I had Karen in January 44. So I was
Karen in 1944.
my oldest daughter. So I went back home and stayed with my parents till the end of the war.
So, where and when did you meet, or is that too private a question?
Oh gosh, we had a mutual friend, and I used to date this Bill Tremaine.
Oh yeah,
Bill Tremaine.
Tremaine.
Yeah, it was quite a while after I graduated from UBC, and so he's always talking about his friend Tommy Trapp. Trapp. So finally one night we went to a party and Tommy was there. And we met at the party, didn't we, Tom? And Bill met Marjorie at that party, so we just changed partners.
Well, you changed partners. Nothing old-fashioned about you.
No, well, that was just, he just asked me because I could dance. He liked it because I could dance. There's nothing there, but anyway, just old friends.
I know.
But he was a fraternity brother of mine.
So you attended the University of British Columbia?
Yeah.
And you attended the University of British Columbia as well, Tom?
Right.
You didn't mention that before. I knew I'd heard you were there. I thought it might come up when we were talking about where you met and so on.
But neither of us were there at the same time.
Oh, I see. So you met outside of school, in other words.
After school.
After school. And what did you major in?
History.
History, good. What about you, Tom? Did you have a major of any kind, or did you just take the bull by the horns and let it win?
I didn't graduate, but I took a lot. I was taking engineering, so. But then I didn't graduate because I joined the firm and in New Westminster and worked with my dad.
You joined the firm at that point.
Trapp
Yes.
Motors,
Yes.
About 19.
Yeah. And what about your children and your grandchildren? Can you say a few words about those wonderful people? I'm sure they are.
I don't know what to say.
Well,
Karen,
how many do you have?
3. They're all girls. Karen is the oldest. That was born in 1944. And Susan,
I was overseas.
Yeah, and after the war, Susan was born in 1950. Higher? Yeah, okay. I'll speak up. Susan was born in 1950 in New Westminster.
Excuse me.
She has grown up, and she went to university for several years, but she never did get to graduate because she had some health problems that interfered. So she has been working as a, what would you call it, a nurse's aide or in a rest home for 25 years, she told me. 38. And Mary Nell was born in 1954. That was our last one at home. And so she was quite supportive when Tom went out of business. She was the only one that had a job in the family.
Yeah, sure.
But anyway, Mary grew up and she went over and got her Bachelor of Home Economics.
Oh, I see.
And she met Ian Walton. And,
excuse me?
She met Ian Walton while at university, and they got married soon after university, and they have 3 children.
Oh, yes. 3 children.
Yeah. Suzanne, who's 18.
Oh.
Carly, she's 14, right?
15.
They're making 15. And Cameron, that's 12.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 1 grandson in our family.
Good.
No.
1 grandson.
Yeah.
The reason I was, excuse me, I just have something in my throat here. Excuse me again, sorry. The reason I'm asking these names is because at the end of this, I write a general statement about the interview, you see, and I want to make sure I have the names right.
Right.
That's not the only reason. I'm
No.
also very interested in it, too. Well, is there anything that you might want to say that about your family that I haven't referred to in this?
Can you think of anything, Tom?
It's very interesting, I should say.
Karen got her flying papers.
Oh.
And she did have a plane for a while.
Uh-huh.
She decided when Uncle Raymond was quite ill in West Vancouver, she was living just outside of, what was it called, that place?
Campbell River.
No, before she left, on this side of the water. She was living out there anyway, just past, can't think of the name. Horseshoe Bay.
Horseshoe Bay.
Yeah, and so she used to drop in and talk to Raymond. So she decided, well, since there's no boys in the family to carry on flying, she decided to take flying lessons when she was up in Quadra Island, and she came back and eventually got herself a little plane that she had here. And the only problem was that she had jobs to do. She was working, and she didn't get the time to use the plane, so she finally got rid of it. But that was something she did.
Well, that's very interesting indeed. It's remarkable that she'd be able to do that all right.
Tommy's sister also, didn't she fly, Tom?
I wonder if we could turn then just briefly to, not briefly, but at this time to your father. I'm interested to know if the type of involvement that your dad had with your father, with your grandfather, T.J. Trapp and Company, after he left school. We talked about your father and the business, the automotive business in the last tape to some extent, but I just before he got into the business, the automotive business, I just wondering when did he get involved? Did he do that when he was at high school, or did he have other jobs, or did he get involved at a very early time?
No, he just went to grade 12, I guess.
Yeah.
And he joined the firm with my grandfather, and he did, in other words, sales promotion, selling, because they were into all kinds of business, including farm machinery, and a lot of traveling and so forth. But the thing that he took on was the auctioneering.
Oh, yes.
Grandfather was quite well known as an auctioneer down at the city market, and my dad carried on with that, and he expanded on that, and he did a lot of auctioneering in the Fraser Valley and various farms and so forth.
Good. And he stayed with your father's firm right till the day or the time it was sold in 1929.
Right.
Then at which time he went into the automotive business.
And so with the help of his father, he built quite an establishment down on West Columbia Street, 891 Columbia Street, where the interurban rail tracks ran right in front of the showroom windows. So it was right in Chinatown at that time. And so he moved the business down there in 1929, and then, of course, things really went to pot as far as business was concerned and car sales. But he still kept the garage going because there's lots of repair business to be done, and servicing the cars that he had sold.
Just going back to the hardware business just momentarily, when your father, or your grandfather rather, bought the Dean brothers out, did they start the hardware business in the premises of Dean brothers?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't know too much about that.
No.
But he started in a smaller way on Columbia Street.
Oh, yes.
And then he started the store at where the Kresge used to be years ago. And then
Excuse me again, I'm sorry.
In 1912, he built that big hardware store with a 6-story that's still there now.
6 stories.
They're called the Trapp.
6 stories, yes.
But on Columbia Street, across the street from there, where the Kresge is.
And it must have 6 stories. It must have employed quite a large staff.
Yeah, they had quite a large staff. I couldn't say just how many.
No.
They had office staff. They had all those mechanics in the garage, and the garage, which is right across the tracks from the main store. And then you had the clerks, and then you had a metalworking business upstairs.
Well, metalworking business upstairs.
And of course, they had all that farm machinery business.
Yes.
And I always remember my uncle telling me about them supplying a pump, a water pump, up to somebody around Hope, I think it was. And so they had a letter from this fellow. He was making some derogatory remarks about the supply of the pump, that the handle was missing. And then they put a postscript down at the bottom, sorry, but we found the handle. And they sent the letter anyway. I remember my uncle telling me that.
That's funny. That's funny. You know. They just want to put on record that they arrived without a handle as far as they knew. That's good.
Yeah, but then they found the handle.
Yeah.
So they sent the letter anyway. Their business, the farm machinery business, went right into the Okanagan. So they supplied, Case was a well-known name, and then John Deere, and those kind of farm machinery.
So we mentioned in the previous tape that when your father sold this, it became Cunningham Trapp. Because it was Marshall Wells, was it? The
grandfather.
Your grandfather. I'm always making that mistake. It's hard for me to think in terms of grandfathers. I never met my grandfather. And how long did Cunningham Trapp remain in business? Would you know, Tom?
Well, it became, it was purchased by Marshall Wells, and I couldn't say just how long. It was into the 30s. Oh, no, I guess it was even after the war that Marshall Wells.
Oh, yes.
They reverted to their own name.
That's all right. And when Marshall Wells, when the business finished, I understand that it was either the Salvation Army or a furniture store took over the premises. Is that correct, or is that incorrect?
I think it was Army and Navy.
Army and Navy.
Bought the place later on. I just don't know what date that was.
No.
After the war, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You have no idea what what they're doing in the building now, are they?
No, it just seems to remain sort of semi-vacant.
Oh, I see.
And people use the storefront for surplus goods.
Was your father involved in community fairs like your grandfather?
Yes, he was.
Mm-hmm.
He carried on quite a bit to it.
Well, we're back in business again, and just asking Tom if his father was involved in community fairs to the extent his grandfather was located in community fairs. Go ahead, Tom.
Yes. I would say he was just as involved in community affairs as his grandfather. But I think of how, in 1929, when grandfather got out of the business, he died in 1933. So you think of his age at that time. He was really getting on.
His 90s.
And he died in his 90th year. So anyway, he took off with from my grandfather and carried on with the Royal Agricultural and Industrial Society. And that, I think that organization is in the existence today. It had a lot of things that it could have gambling and so forth that other organizations couldn't have.
Oh, they had gambling in those, and they were at the head of it. Was it legitimately recognized?
Yeah. It was in their charter.
Oh, bring your own dice type of thing.
Anyways, he was also almost with the first when the Rotary Club was established in New Westminster. He was a member of that for years. And he was an alderman too in New Westminster during the war, just before the war. So he was quite involved in community affairs. One thing I remember that they used to have to raise funds for buying airplanes for the elementary flying schools at the beginning of the war.
Oh, is that right?
And they had this barrel that they used to put in the water at Hope, and then everybody had to guess when it would cross under the bridge in New Westminster. So
I haven't done that for a long time.
So that hasn't happened for some time.
That was a Trapp idea, wasn't it?
Well, he was part of it. I guess the Rotary Club, I think they sponsored that
Rotary there.
Because the whole Rotary gang were involved in that.
But I think we mentioned in the last tape that he shook hands with Winston Churchill.
Well, when he was President R.A. and I, in 1929, when the exhibition buildings burned down.
That was it.
So they had the exhibition in tents, and Winston Churchill was coming out to open the fair, but then the buildings had burned down, of course, before he arrived. So when he came, he opened the fair in the tents. And father was president at that time, so he welcomed him and did the ceremonial stuff.
I understand also that he was a pretty good man with a gun. Is that correct?
He was quite a marksman. He was quite well known. I always remember when I was over for coronation in England, and Harvey Macmillan, H.R. Macmillan.
Yes.
He was at this Canadian Club meeting that I was at in London, and he asked me if I was related to that Trapp that was such a good shot on the coast. So I said, that was my father.
Oh, Jesus. Wonderful. Archie Miller has asked me at the museum, has asked me a couple of times if I would ask you if the animal heads Irving House were donated by your father. And last time I spoke with Archie, I said I was on the impression that Tom was not sure about that. And he said, "Oh, I think he is." And so I'll ask you again, do you know anything about those animal heads down there?
Yes, I had quite a bit to do with that.
Oh, I see.
When we rented the store up front, the hardware store, we had to get the heads removed.
Oh, you had the heads from the hardware store.
We're in the auto showroom.
In the auto showroom.
The showroom,
yeah,
891 Columbia
right,
Street.
yeah.
And, but those heads were put up there because they were trophies that were brought back from the Yukon. They weren't my dad.
See.
He was good friends with,
you
might remember Al Hager, and then there was a Dr. Frank Smith, and they were up in the Yukon with a great big hunting expedition.
Oh,
so they had all these heads mounted.
Oh, I see.
And so I sold the heads because we had to get rid of them.
Right.
To sell them.
Yeah.
So I offered them for $10 a head, and people came from all over to buy the heads.
Bought the heads,
and I always remember this one fellow from North Down came over, and he bought this great big moose head.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the horn spread must have been about 8 feet or something. And then he took it home, and his wife wouldn't let him in the door.
Oh.
So he wanted to bring it back and return it and get his $10. But I said, no, that was a final sale.
Yeah.
So so where the heads went, from there they went all over.
Yeah, so they could have gone to Irving House.
I think, some of them, maybe the smaller ones, right? And they might have been given to them by somebody, that I don't know of.
So,
but I think some of them went to these lodges, lodges.
I see.
They were purchased by one or two of those.
Somebody up in Hope bought some.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting story. Your father and his friends are up in the Yukon, and you're not sure your father shot these. Maybe he did, but he was the friends. He brought them back, and they eventually ended up in the showroom. The heads ended up in the showroom at the shop, the display room.
Well, Al Hager and Dr. Smith, they have no idea where else are they going to put them.
So you sold them for $10 a head, and a chap bought them, or some of them anyway, and his wife wouldn't let him put them up in the house.
She wouldn't let him in the door.
Wouldn't let him in the door. And so he took them back to see if he could return it to you. I want my money back, type of thing. And he said, no deal. And so then he gave them to some other people, and they could have ended up in Irving House. Is that the story?
Yeah. Another head that we had, I think it was a milk, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a deer, a moose, and an elk down there.
This one was sent to a friend of my father's, who was a member of Lloyd's of London. And so my mother had me send this big head. It was a caribou head, and we sent it to Lloyd's of London. And this fellow's name was Tommy Floss, and that my dad knew. So he had it, and it was in Lloyd's of London until they did a total renovation of Lloyd's some years ago.
They put it in the dining room, didn't they,
Tom?
And showed it to your mother when she visited London.
Yeah.
There's one thing that amazes me too, is that, when you think of people who, like your father and your grandfather, were very successful in business, and there were people who took chances, and I can't help but think of the time when you mentioned that he started this automotive business in 1929, but the same year the stock market crashed, that we had a horrible depression, the Great Depression for the next 10 years. Now that must have been quite a challenge to start a business at the beginning of a depression, and particularly after the largest stock market crash in history. You had an awful lot of guts to do that, didn't you?
Well, it was all in the works, that he built this building. I think he borrowed the money from my grandfather to build the building for the Trapp Motors. Yes. And so we were General Motors dealers then, so we had the full line of General Motors.
Yes. But so people were buying cars in the Depression. Sure, they were people. Yes.
Not too many. Though.
No, not too many. No, I can imagine.
Very few new cars were sold.
I just finished reading Pierre Burton's Great Depression, and all told were people who who escaped some of its most severe implications because of a number of circumstances. There were others, of course, who were completely devastated. People that top of a chap whose father was a very prominent doctor in Vancouver, and I don't know whose name his name is technically, but and he was accustomed to a rather, what you might say, a life of luxury, but his father lost everything he had in the stock market, and he said that he actually ended up tin canning, going up and down the streets begging for money. So there's a lot of so I think that's an admirable thing that he was able to carry that thing in light of, you might say, unsurmountable circumstances.
Yeah. Well, Packard Motors' dad kept going. Yeah. He was the auditor. I shouldn't tell out this stuff. Yeah. It's private, but it's no longer in operation.
I understand that.
So there were people that were able to get through the.
Oh, sure. Yes, of course. Well, now, you were 16 years old, I would imagine, when your grandfather sold the business. And did you work for the company as a boy or as a teenager, part-time work, that kind of thing?
Yes. Well,
your father's business. Your grandfather. Yeah, was
before that. My brother and I used to. They got us down to the hardware store, and so we would count nuts and bolts.
Oh, yes.
So we had some involvement when we were just kids, so they paid us to do that, my brother and I.
Did you ever have any other jobs besides working in the store when you were a teenager? Part-time jobs?
I don't think I was hardly a teenager.
How did you get into the tools? You and Bill used to go down and play with
the tools?
Mechanical stuff.
Yeah, at Trapp Motors.
Yeah.
Well, I had several jobs at Trapp Motors.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Just initially, I worked on the gas pump.
Oh, yes.
And then I did some clerical work for writing up work orders in the shop, the mechanical shop. And then after that, I got into sales in 1936. And I left university, so I was getting into that. And then I guess I was on parts sales too. I went on that, covering the territory for Trapp Motors parts.
So would you carry
that? At the same time, I remember that I was quite interested in flying because my uncle Raymond Collishaw was a war ace in the First World War, and with the Royal Air Force. So he was kind of a hero of mine. I wanted to get into the airplane business, so my dad helped me, and he got others to help, and we bought an airplane. It was a small little airplane, and I looked after it for some years until we had to get off it was at Vancouver Airport. So this little airplane I remember was CFBIP, and it's still around, but now they call them ultralights because they were so small, for 40 horsepower.
They say flying an ultralight can be recognized as legitimate suicide, legalized suicide.
I don't know that, but anyway, I used to look after the servicing of the airplane.
Oh, yes.
Every part, even if it's just a nut and bolt you could get at a hardware store, had to have a certificate of airworthiness attached to it. So I ended up making lots of trips to Seattle to keep the plane going.
So it was in your blood, all right, and the family.
But then I had trouble with my eyesight. I couldn't pass the test. The doctor wouldn't okay me to apply for my ticket for flying, my flying ticket. So I had to abandon that idea, and the doctor told me, he said, well, you're a good car driver, so you better stay at that.
Well, I think that's an interesting background, all right. You in the automotive business, you had a repair shop, full service repair, sold new cars, and you at one time were in charge of the pumping gas, so you serviced the full service and gas. And did you sell second cars? What's the expression now? Used cars, as well as brand new ones.
Oh, yeah. We were into that in a big way. Matter of fact, I looked after the conditioning of used cars for a while, and then when the war came along, of course, new car sales were abandoned. Well, there were no new cars being built. So. Anyways, and then that tapered off. So, and then I had to join up.
You had to join up.
So I did that, and I was in that from 42 to 45, and 45. And I was over in Italy and England and Belgium, North Africa. So that was quite a sojourn.
Sure. And I would imagine you were glad to get out of it too.
Yeah. Well, I went in as a private soldier with the Ordnance Corps, but I ended up with being a sergeant in charge of records. And I remember when we were in Belgium, we were in this big armories, and we were processing people that were coming. This was after we moved up from Italy. All the prisoners of war were coming, but this was one of the places that we were processing them. And so I remember Tommy Douglas coming and visiting our unit when I was there in Brussels, and also W.C. Woodward, who was the Lieutenant Governor of British Columbia. So we had
you're surrounded with dignitaries.
Yeah, well, we were important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But it was sure interesting seeing the reaction to these people that were coming back after being prisoners of war for years, and they didn't know where they were or what was real. It was amazing to see them.
So then after the war, you, I believe this after war dates, you were showing me pictures in the Colombian newspaper, full-page ads, and I believe you were known throughout as the president of the company or the general manager of the automotive business.
Well, my father died in 1947, so the general manager, the sales manager of General Motors of Canada came on, and he interviewed me with So he decided that I could carry on the dealership. So I did. With my mother's help and for the finance.
Sure. And then it was moved to Coquitlam, and it was in Coquitlam when you closed out the business. Was that? Yeah.
Well, we were there on Carnarvon Street for some years till 67. When we moved out
To Coquitlam.
We built this big building in Coquitlam.
So that's quite an experience you had, all right, with that whole thing. I know everybody in New Westminster and surrounding areas knew about Trapp Motors, and it certainly was, as far as I can understand, recognized as a very reliable firm. Were you associated with community groups like your father? I know you were.
Yes.
Board of Trade and Chamber of Commerce and all that sort of stuff?
Well, Board of Trade it was at that when
Board of Trade.
Joined up. So I was vice president of that, but I didn't go up to Fred because I was too young. I couldn't spend the time away from the business.
No.
I didn't go through with that.
No.
But I was also very interested in our church, the Queen's
Yes.
United Church. So I got more involved in that, of course, when we had a young family coming up. So then that made that a lot more important.
Yes.
And there's other things that I was interested in.
You go ahead if there's anything we haven't covered, you think we should have covered. I have other questions to ask about other things, but up to this point, if there's something that's overlooked, you think? Some question I should have asked, I didn't ask?
You were on some committees on the yacht club business. That took us time, but it wasn't earning money.
But that was sort of community group.
Yeah. So, well, maybe you might want to talk about I understand that you're a very well-known and competent yachtsman or boatsman. What is the correct?
Well, and I
as
was
a leisure activity.
Interested in boating, of course, from way back, go back to 1929 when my dad was promoting the Royal RA&I exhibition in Westminster, and so I was. He bought an outboard motor, a big Avenue 22 horsepower, and he also had a little hydroplane built. So that my brother and I raced around Burrard around Port Moody, the body of water called Port Moody. And then we ended up, because of my father and his involvement with the provincial exhibition, ended up in a race in the river. And some time ago, a gal, Frances, phoned up from the museum in Westminster to ask if that name on that Flummerfelt trophy was
Excuse me, on which trophy?
The Flummerfelt.
Flummerfelt?
Flummerfelt. He was the head of the Pacific Coast Terminals at that.
Oh, yeah. Do you know how to spell his name?
Flun.
Flummerfelt. F-U-L-T. Or F-E-L? F-E-L-T. Okay, that's fine. Carry on.
That's on the trophy. So I said, yeah, well, that was yours truly. So I went down and saw the trophy, and we had our picture taken. Later, why did the paper? So finding this after all those years, because this happened,
Well, you were
after the war, much after the war.
I understand that you were the winner of many prominent races, and awards?
Well, we went
Past Commodore of the International Boat Cargo Association?
In boats. We bought a boat in 1952 and put a couple of avenues on it so we'd go fast.
Oh, this was the MV Smitty you showed me.
This is before the Smitty.
Or before the Smitty.
And then in 1957, we was looking for a boat.
Don't let me get ahead of you. I'm sorry. I interrupted.
And so I looked around, and the one boat that kind of caught my eye was
57. Did you say
57? 57 that caught my eye was in the river, and it was an ex-Navy boat, a harbor defense patrol craft, and it was surplus at that time from the war, of course. So, anyways, the fellow had had made it into a charter boat. So he had the cabin and so forth made up a little bit more than the Navy boat. So we had bought that in December '57, and we had it we sold it in our 40th year with the same boat, and we kept it at Cole Harbor, of course, where the Royal Vancouver Yacht Club was, and that's how we got involved in this activity, predicted log racing.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
How does that work?
That's sort of like a car rally, where you predict how long
it
takes you to go from A to B without reference to any clock. You could just have to guess to try and predict when you are going to go from point A to point B. Somebody else taking your time on board the boat.
And where was point A and point B in your case?
Well, it could be all kinds of places. It's out Point Grey, English Bay, and we raced up to Alaska a few times.
Was that the Nanaimo to Alaska?
Well, that was, they called it the capital. The capital races started initially from Olympia, Washington to Juneau.
Yes.
And then we sort of corrupted that a bit. We went from the capital of B.C. up to
well, that's better. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. But we raced, and then we won that race one year. And the Juneau gang gave us a special award, which was a gold pan for panning gold, and they gave one of these to the cruise ship at the end of the season for each one of them. So they gave us one at Juneau, so with our names on it. So it was that was one of the high points.
That's marvelous.
And Tommy was race master for 3 races. In other words, he had to plan the race from here and what we did when we got to Prince Rupert and meeting the yacht club and all the rest of it. And I looked after the race scores. Well, we had people coming from California, and they do a different type of log racing. They race over the bottom, whatever that is. And so the first time we were out on a race, the young kids, there were quite a few of them, and this boy was about 16, I guess. And he says, they're all stopping before the finish. And then they come into the finish. And so it always gave me an idea there's something going on that isn't right. But anyway, so the last time I looked after it, instead of letting them have 10%, that you could put the throttle ahead 10%, I canceled it. I said, no touching the throttle. Not this time.
No touching the throttle. Good for you.
Some of them had to redo their race because they had put in a little here, and they got the, where the current was, they were going to. But anyway, it was fun. And then then we went on. Well, we were 8 races all together. From 76 was the first, and 78 was and that 50th anniversary race, and we went to Olympia and then all the way up. I've got a book over here. I'll show you afterwards of our last race.